And I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, General Robert H. Doc Foglesong, who was born and raised in Mingo County, so he's a West Virginia boy. He attended WVU and he received his bachelor's, his master's, and his PhD in chemical engineering. Doc Foglesong served 33 distinguished years in the military in the Air Force, and of his many duties, he was a fighter pilot, and he attained the rank of 4-star general. I believe the only 4-star general from West Virginia in our militaries in the U.S. Army, and we're very proud of that. His last command was the commander of all U.S. Air Forces in Europe. Doc Foglesong during his career has had many, many recognitions and honors. I will list just a few of them. He holds an honorary doctorate in strategic intelligence. He was a distinguished alum of West Virginia University. In 2005, West Virginia Executive identified him as the Patriot of the Year in West Virginia. He serves on many boards of directors and many Fortune 500 companies. He has served as president of Mississippi State University, and we're very honored that he's currently serving on our board of governors and provides great leadership and direction for this university. During his career, he has served as an advisor to many senior national leaders, congressional members, cabinet members, and heads of states. He is a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, and in his career, he has earned the title Doc because he has more than 60 publications to his credit. But Doc Foglesong is currently the president and the executive director of the Appalachian Leadership and Education Foundation, known as ALIF, an organization that is committed to mentoring and developing young men and women throughout the state of West Virginia and beyond for the next leadership in the Appalachian region. It is in this role that he truly changes the lives of young men and young women through the service and leadership. It is truly my pleasure to present to you a patriot, a son of West Virginia, a veteran of great distinction, a general leader, a genuine leader, and my friend, Doc Foglesong.
I intend to get personal here today, so I would like everybody that's over here to move over here, if you would, please. Lisa, my apologies. This may be screwing up your protocol, but that's why this concrete's in the middle. Come on over. Could we have had a better day for celebrating and honoring our veterans than today? Sometimes, too often, we talk about macro numbers when it comes to discussing our veterans, and I believe it's too important. We talk about the 48 million Americans who served in uniform since 1776. We talk about the hundreds of thousands who sacrificed their lives. We talk about the over 70,000 who are still missing in action. Those numbers are all meaningful and significant. But I want to talk today in a more personal sense and tell you a story that I believe indicates why Americans' veterans are the foundation of what makes this nation great. On the 26th of November, 1950, a 22-year-old squad leader named John Pittman from Carrollton, Mississippi, was somewhere between Pyongyang and the Yalu River on the Korean Peninsula. His squad had been pushed off the high ground a couple times, and he had several injuries from those encounters with North Koreans and the Communist Chinese. And his commander asked him to lead a charge back up that hill and take that high ground. They planned and executed that action, took that high ground, and as they gathered around, these squad members, to determine how best to defend that valuable territory, a North Korean lobbed a grenade into the middle of those men. And John Pittman jumped on that grenade. The airback John Pittman out shortly after that. And the first question he asked was, "How are my men?" Years later, John Pittman survived that and was running a hardware store in Greenwood, Mississippi. And a job came open in the post office. And if you're a Medal of Honor winner, you get extra points for federal jobs. I'm okay with that value. So they came over and asked John Pittman, "Would you like to apply for this job because you're likely to get it with your extra points as a result of winning the Medal of Honor? And it's an easier job." And John Pittman said, "I didn't do anything that anybody else would have done." Well, he's wrong to start off with. But John Pittman exemplifies Americans, exemplifies veterans that we take away from their families. They volunteer to go out in droves from the hills of West Virginia to the plains in Kansas, to our cities, you name it. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, nurses, plumbers, carpenters volunteer to go out and protect this nation's most valuable commodity, our freedom. Many of them didn't have to do that. My father was a steam fitter on the N&W Railroad when World War II broke out. And these are his dog tags, because he volunteered with almost every steam fitter that was down there to go join the Seabees in the Navy. And he carried these in places that we hadn't heard of until places like Tarawa and Guadalcanal, places that were terrible. These men and women who volunteered to take themselves away from their normal lives went to places like Incheon, Hue, Saigon, Fallujah, Bastogne, places where Americans brought their courage and defended our freedom. It irritates me somewhat when I travel overseas and hear people talk about imperialism in America in the same sentence. Truly, the only land that we ever coveted, those veterans ever fought for, were those cemeteries that are overseas now, where we planted an awful lot of our young men and women, and they're still there. So America is the world's most respected and feared military. We are all standing on that legacy of those men and women starting in 1776. I have a son who's a colonel in the Air Force, married to a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. Has 3 grandbabies, and they all think they're generals, by the way. And he and I have had this discussion. The strength of this nation, in no small part, is based upon those men and women who committed themselves and continue to do that today in lands far away, places on maps that we had never ever heard of 2 decades ago. These young men and women, let me assure you, are just as tough and just as committed as the rest of those soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines whose legacy we're standing on. They do not hesitate when it comes to protecting our freedom. I'm not big on reading speeches, as you can probably tell, but I do have something that I want to read to you. And it's the reason that all of us who volunteer to go out and serve in the military do so. This article is called Ode to America, and it was written by a Romanian news editor who was in Washington, D.C. on the 11th of September. And this guy gets it. He describes what we're about and why we volunteer our services better than anybody I can think of. Bear with me while I read this and listen closely. As I mentioned, it's called Ode to America. Why are Americans so united? They don't resemble one another even if you paint them. They speak all the languages of the world and form an astonishing mixture of civilizations. Some of them are nearly extinct, others are incompatible with one another, and in matters of religious beliefs, not even God can count how many there are. Still, the American tragedy turned 300 million people, all of us were veterans that day, into a hand put on the heart. Nobody rushed to accuse the White House, the Army, the Secret Services. Nobody rushed to empty their bank accounts. The Americans volunteered to donate blood and give a helping hand, because that's what we do. After the first few moments of panic, they raised their flag on the smoking ruins, putting on t-shirts and caps and ties in the colors of the national flag. They placed flags on buildings and cars as if in every place, on every car, a minister or a president was passing. On every occasion, they started singing their traditional song, God Bless America. Silent as a rock, I watched a charity concert broadcast on Saturday once, twice, 3 times on different TV channels. The American solidarity of spirit turned them into a choir. Now listen carefully. Actually, choir is not the right word. What you could hear was the heavy artillery of the American soul. I watched the live broadcast and the rerun of its rerun for hours, listening to the story of the guy who went down 100 floors with a woman in a wheelchair without knowing who she was, the California hockey player who fought with terrorists and prevented a plane from hitting a target. What on earth could reunite the Americans in such a way? I tried for hours to find an answer, humming songs and murmuring phrases. I thought things over and reached only one conclusion. Only freedom can work such miracles. Only freedom can work such miracles. God bless the United States of America, and God bless our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, past and present.